Yeah, it's a very exciting initiative, and we're just beginning this. And as it develops, I believe I believe Mr. Geller will be. We're hoping to be part of this group, or someone from Kokua Council, because we want input from all the different organizations.
And again, from just where we sit at sort of a bird's eye view of this nonprofit sector, we recognize the demographic trend of an aging population here in Hawaii, and would hope that the array of nonprofit service delivers will respond to that demographic shift, and we support funding for that.
Can you repeat this? As you look at all the nonprofits you're aware of, does it kind of break down in certain kinds of issues, services? Can you give us a little overview of
Sure.
the universe of nonprofits and what they do?
Sure. I didn't provide copies of this, but it's on our website, and for anybody who would like another hard copy, I'm happy to provide. But in our nonprofit sector, I would say the breakdown is health and human services make up, since I'm doing the math really quickly, 42% of services. And then, wait, hold on, I have this breakdown right here. Human services, which would include those types of services, 30%. Health and mental health, 12%. Education would be 18%. Arts, culture, humanities, 15%. Environment, animal-related, 6%. Community improvement or public societal benefit organizations make up 10%, and 4% for religion, and a 1% for other, like research, science, technology. So that's kind of the pie of the nonprofit sector, but I would say health and human service together make up the biggest pie. That answered your question. And this is, I'm referring to a sector report that Pano put out. It's a little dated, it's from 2011. We do have raw 2013 data, but we haven't compiled our sector report yet, so that'll be coming up shortly.
To kind of just add to that conversation, they're not necessarily grants. We consider these contracts, but we have two other divisions, and that is our elderly affairs divisions, and we receive Older Americans Act money and Kapuna Care money from the state, and those funds are all targeted toward our senior population. And we also have another division, which is our Work Hawaii, where we are the recipient of U.S. Department of Labor funding, where we spend funds to develop our workforce. It's workforce development and job training. Thank you.
Next question has to do with sorting out what does the state do, what does the city do, where's the overlap? And the specific question actually has to do with funding project graduation, right? Of course, project graduation may or may not deal with public schools. It may deal with private schools as well. Do any of you have comments about, is there a certain unstated line, that's what they do, this is what we do?
Relative to project graduation, or I'm going to defer to the ladies that are on both sides of the aisle.
Well, you know, there are lines, but they should be blurred so that both city and state work on these services together. I think it's more cost effective. You know, it's the same constituents. I always talk to legislators and even the governor and say, we can't say they're state, we're county. They're the same people. So, you know, we should work together, collaborate, and make best use of our monies.
I guess I don't have a sense of that landscape and where the delineations are. I think city services are dictated a lot by its funding stream. So HUD money coming down through CDBG funds. You know, city services around culture and the arts are dictated by internal decision-making processes that kind of carve out that space. I mean, it's kind of similar to who owns that highway. Is it state or city? You know, it's kind of, these are predetermined decisions that help delineate how services or funding flows.
I think the one area that we can say that we have totally blurred the line, and that is our efforts to address homelessness and housing, and our efforts to reach across Punch Bowl Street and collaborate with the state. The city for a long time stepped back from that problem and was pointing to the other side. And the Caldwell administration recognized that this is our role to collaborate with the state and the private sector to develop a solution on that homeless problem.
I do know that from where we sit as a statewide association, where we have Maui nonprofits as HANO members, the Maui nonprofit community is very much tied to county funding. So a lot of the services, the safety net services, are really being delivered through county money, some state, but the landscape looks a little different from island to island.
I want to ask a question about trends and unstated rules. Recently, it's been observed that both for the state and city funding, that decision makers want to know that they're not the first to fund the project and that you have cash in hand or commitments in hand. But the foundations have also adopted the same approach. We don't want to be first. So this has become a catch-22 trend in seeking funds. And I wonder if you want to comment on that or any other trends you've sort of observed.
We can acknowledge that is in fact true. As stewards of taxpayer dollars, we don't want to be the first in because it represents the highest risk. So one of the ways we've been discussing internally to address that is to provide a conditional award so that folks can know that they've got a commitment, but they need to come to the table with their other funding before we actually release our money. So we can make that commitment contingent on additional monies being funded toward the project. So once they achieve a certain goal of funding, then we can release the monies. And it's just a new idea that we've been kicking around to address that concern.
I'm not aware of that. I just, you know, sometimes government processes just kind of, you know, give me a headache because they're just so, there's things that happen that you just never think of and you wonder how this developed. So the bottom line is we just got to keep moving forward, trying to work together, and who cares what happens as long as there's a solution and services are provided.
Again, I'm going to toot the horn for collaboration. So if a small nonprofit that's an unknown quantity is really looking to get its foot in the door with a funder, perhaps that's a good opportunity to approach a larger, well-established nonprofit that has a funding history with a government partner and offer, again, that very customized grassroots expertise that only it can do because it's so small and community-based. And again, this larger nonprofit is really needing that service as a complement to its service. But using the leverage of that larger nonprofit and the reputation and the credibility to get a foothold, demonstrate success, and then maybe the funding entity, whether it's a government entity or a private trust and foundation, will be willing next time to be the first in for that smaller nonprofit. There was another point I was going to make about being the first in. Jim asked a question about what are some new models around that. There is a concept called social impact bonds that are fairly new to our sector, and this is kind of wild, and it hasn't been demonstrated. I think the first known case came out of England, and it's still being tested. But it's where a venture capital group will come in and actually provide the front-end investment for a nonprofit's operations to provide a certain very specific service that is measurable and has demonstrated outcomes. If that nonprofit organization with that front-end investment is able to actually lower, in this case, like incidences of recidivism to prison amongst youth, youth inmates or something, if they're able to actually reduce incidences of recidivism, then the government partner agrees to pay the venture capitalists back with interest. but with the notion that government is going to begin to enjoy cost effectiveness to the program, and will not have to keep funding the same nonprofit the same amount every year for no outcome. So if the nonprofit is successful, then everybody wins. It's kind of a wild idea. Rare in this day and age is there a venture capitalist who's going to take that risk, but they're trying to test this through this concept called the social impact bond.
Speaking of partnerships, someone asked a question about the issue of safety and seniors crossing the street. You know, we try to do highly expensive things with the light and the longer crosswalk and whatnot. But what about funding ARP or someone to have an escort across the street service, the way many private schools and others do? You know, they have parents and they escort the kids across the crosswalks. Has there been any thought about utilizing the nonprofit sector to create a more a safer environment that might be kind of more expensive to deal with technologically?
It seems it would be an appropriate grant and aid application for a nonprofit that wanted to undertake that community need. They could certainly apply for those funds.
I remember growing up, we had these junior police officers, and it was such a, you know, honor to be able to stand there, and you have like some sort of helmet or something and a whistle and a sign that says stop, and you help people cross the street. I don't know what happened to groups like that, but yeah, certainly I echo the director's plea that if there is someone out there who would like to apply for an RFP for that service, we'd certainly look at it.
Again, a different take on this issue is it illustrates an innovative and yet very simple and kind of old school program like that actually could be done best through volunteers. And so I don't think nonprofits utilize the volunteer base enough. And I think from where Hano sits is we're trying to look at the sector and see where we can be most leverage all the resources that are available to us in the sector. Are we encouraging nonprofits to spend wisely, to utilize resources wisely? You know, it's our value to encourage our members and our constituency to maximize and utilize to the best of their ability all of the resources at hand. And having said that, I don't think volunteerism is not being utilized to the extent that it could be. As an offshoot, not related to the JPOs, is we recognize that there is a senior contingency, the baby boomer crowd that is retiring, that has so much to still give in expertise, knowledge, and often it has kind of the wisdom of having been in the workforce for a long time, and still can bring that to bear in the nonprofit sector. And what we're contemplating is facilitating a little bit more of that kind of exchange of a matchmaking baby boomer expertise or retiree expertise, and via whether it's paid consultancy or volunteer based, trying to match resources up that way.